Popcat Gunster, hello my friend. Popcat, I have a tradition here where every time someone joins the chat for the first time, we blow on the horn. That may have been a bit too loud, I tried to do that out of the microphone. But yeah, hello my friend. I was just waiting a few minutes just to warm up a bit, and we're going to start reading The Odyssey. I'm a bit late starting than usual today. But yes, I was reading this last week, yeah, and we got to the end of book 2. I'm using an old paper copy that I have. ASMR page turning. I don't know how well it comes up on the mic, but we're using an old copy which I had from my student days many years ago. It's full of old notes I had on it at the time as well, and old highlightings and writings. So maybe after reading the book 3 here, we'll go over some notes that I had written down on here. Thank you for that, Gunster. Actually, I always forget I need to turn off redeems, because I always forget. I see the circle. I see the circle. Circle. Hey man, if you find reading about classics from like over 3,000 years ago sexy, I'm not going to deny it. It is pretty great. They're pretty great. I'm very late starting streams, so this probably won't be a very long stream, maybe about an hour or so. But you know what? That's okay. I think we can just start. So I do, just to summarize what's happened so far, if you and anyone else coming in has not read The Odyssey before, is unaware of what's going on. So we're on book 3 now. What's happened is we have had this convene with the gods, where Athene, which in this translation it's written as Athene, not the common Athena as it is nowadays. So, but they're both valid names for her. She has inquired with Zeus, pleaded with Zeus, can you please let Odysseus go? He's been not able to get back home for years now, please. I thought, oh yes, of course. Well, we'll get something sorted out about this. Meanwhile, she has gone to visit Odysseus' son Telemachus, who is about 19, 20 years old now. He's kind of grown up hearing all about his dad, and he's been away basically his entire life, and he doesn't really know him at all. His home life is pretty bad at the moment. There's a bunch of men who are trying to win his mum over to become the new king of Ithaca. These suitors, and they're all bad people. They're all kind of assholes. But Athena has visited Telemachus in disguise, and she's basically told him, go on this journey to find clues about your dad's whereabouts. And yeah, he's just started going on that journey now after having this big debate with all the suitors. He called them all together in a big assembly and said, this is outrageous what you're doing. You're breaking the laws of Xenia, which are the laws, the Greek law of gift hospitality. It's very important. Whilst it may be disingenuous to call it, or at least like a misname to call it Greek culture, because Greece was essentially a bunch of city-states, all with their own unique cultures and ideas, but shared religious motifs. Xenia was like a common trend throughout all of it, of like, being kind to your neighbor and doing your best to provide what you can if someone asks for suppliants at your doorstep. All these suitors basically taking advantage of that, ruining the estate, eating them out of house and home. It's not a good look. And let's get on with the story now, because Telemachus has set out on his own journey to find out what has happened to his dad Odysseus. Leaving the waters of the splendid east, the sun leapt up into the brazen firmament to bring bright light to the immortals and to mortal men on the fruitful earth. The travellers now came to Pylos, the stately citadel of Neleus, where they found the people on the seashore sacrificing a jet-black bull to Poseidon, lord of the earthquake, god of the sable locks. Just as a quick interruption there, I do love a lot of these epithets they'll come out with for all these deities. Sable locks, what a lovely term. There were 9 companies seated there, with 500 men in each, and every company had 9 bulls to sacrifice. They had just tasted the victims' entrails and were burning the thigh bones in the god's honour as the travellers brought their trim ship to land. The crews brailed up and furled the sail, moored their vessel, and disembarked with Athene leading the way. Telemachus was the last to leave. The goddess with the flashing eyes turned on him now and said, "Telemachus, you must forget your diffidence. There is no occasion for it here at all. Why have you crossed the seas if not to find out where your father's bones lie buried and how he met his end?" She's in disguise here, by the way. "Go straight up, then, to Nestor, the tamer of horses. We are here to learn the wisdom hidden in his heart. But you yourself must appeal to him, and tell the honest truth, though a man as wise as he will not lie." "But, Mentor," the thoughtful Telemachus asked, "how am I to go to him? How shall I greet him? I've had no practice in making speeches. It is embarrassing for a young man to question one so much his senior." "Telemachus," replied bright-eyed Athene, "where your own intelligence fails, a god will inspire you. For I think the gods have blessed both your birth and your progress to manhood." With this, Pallas Athene led off quickly, and Telemachus followed in the steps of the goddess till they reached the place where the people of Pylos were assembled. There sat Nestor, with his sons, their followers, around them, were piercing meat with skewers or roasting it in preparation for the banquet. But as soon as they caught sight of the strangers, they all made a move in their direction, and took them to the hand and invited them to join them. Nestor's son, Pisistratus, who was the first to reach them, took them both by the hand and gave them places at the banquet on downy fleeces spread over the sandy beach, near his brother Thrasymedes and his father. Then he helped them to the victims' inner parts, filled a gold cup with wine, and welcomed Pallas Athene, daughter of Zeus, who bears the aegis, with these words: "I pray to the god, my friend, this feast that you find us holding in the Lord Poseidon's honour. When you have made your drink offering and your prayer, as our rites dictate, pass on the cup of mellow wine to your companion here, so that he may do the same. For he too must be a worshipper of the immortal gods of whom all men stand in need. Since he is the younger, in fact a man of my own age, bring this golden beaker to you first." And he placed the cup of sweet wine in Athene's hands. The goddess was delighted at the good manners which the young man had shown in giving her the golden beaker first, and at once began an earnest prayer to the Lord Poseidon. "Hear me, Poseidon, sustainer of earth, and do not grudge us, your suppliants, the fulfillment of our wishes. First of all, grant glory to Nestor and his sons. Consider next these others, and then recompense all in Pylos for their sumptuous offerings. Grant, lastly, that Telemachus and I may successfully accomplish the task that brings us in here on our swift black ship, and afterwards reach home safely." I'm sorry, Pop, I just realized. What was the question you wanted to ask? I wasn't paying attention. Sorry about that. So the goddess prayed, and as each position left her lips, she herself made its fulfillment sure. Then she passed the fine, two-handled beaker to Telemachus, and Odysseus' son repeated her prayers. The outer flesh from the victims was now roasted and drawn off the spits, Portions were carved for all, and they began their sumptuous feast. When they had satisfied their appetite and thirst, Nestor, the Gerenian charioteer, said, now that our visitors have eaten well, it is the right moment to put some questions to them, and inquire who they are. Who are you, friends? From what port have you sailed over the highways of the sea? Is yours a trading venture, or you sail the seas recklessly, like roving pirates who risk their lives to ruin other people? Telemachus, inspired by Athene, was anxious for him to question the king about his father's disappearance, and so win a good name among men, now plucked up the courage to make him a spirited reply. Nestor, son of Neleus, great glory of the Greeks, you ask where we come from. I will tell you. We are from Ithaca, which lies at the foot of Mount Neon. We have come on private, not on public, business. I am searching through the length and breadth of the land for news of my noble father, the long-suffering Odysseus, who, it is said, fought by your side years ago at the sack of Troy. We can account for all the others who took part in the war. We know where each man met his pitiful death. But Zeus has wrapped even the death of Odysseus in utter mystery. And no one can tell us for certain when he died, whether he was the victim of some hostile tribe on land, or whether he was lost to sea in Amphitrite's waves. So, I have come about my father's unhappy end. I have come here to plead with you in the hope that you will tell me the truth about my father's unhappy end. If by any chance that you witnessed it yourself, or heard the story from some wanderer like him. For if ever a man was born to suffer, it was he. Do not soften your account of pity or concern for my feelings, but faithfully describe the scene that met your eyes. I beseech you, if ever my good father Odysseus, in the hard years of war at Troy, gave you his word and kept it, remember what he did, and tell me all if you know. My friend, exclaimed Nestor, the Gerenian charioteer, what memories the name of Troy brings back? The miseries we fierce Achaeans endured there. Raid after raid, fight after fight around the valley walls of royal Priam's town. There our best men fell. The warlike Ajax lies, there lies Achilles, there Patroclus, wise in council as the gods. There too Antilochus, my own dear son, as strong as he was handsome, a fast runner. Oh, and what a fighter too! Nor is that the full sum of what the noble Achaeans endured at Troy. There is no man on earth who could unfold to you the whole disastrous tale. Not though you sat and questioned him for half a dozen years, by which time you would have grown weary and gone home. For 9 years we struggled to bring them down by every stratagem we could devise. But Zeus made it very difficult for us to achieve victory, and all the time there was not a man that dated to match his wits against the admirable Odysseus, who in every kind of strategy proved himself supreme. Your father, if you really are his son, oh, indeed, I cannot help looking at you in awe. You talk exactly as he did. I should have sworn no young man could so resemble him in speech. In all these years, whether at the General Assembly or in the Council of Kings, not once did Odysseus and I find ourselves speaking on opposite sides. We seemed to share a single mind. So well did we agree when, with our good sense and judgment, we advised the Argives the best policies. After we had destroyed Priam's towering city, we left in our ships. Then the gods scattered the fleet. Zeus planned disaster for our homeward journey because he had not all behaved sensibly and honestly. and many came to grief through the fatal anger of the bright-eyed daughter of that mighty sire. It happened like this. She began by making the two sons of Atreus quarrel. Acting on the spur of the moment and with no regard for procedure, they summoned the whole Achaean army to assemble at sunset, so that the troops arrived drunk and told them the reason for the assembly. Menelaus put it them all that their first concern should be to get their distant homes across the sea. Well, this was not at all to Agamemnon's liking. He was for keeping them there and making ceremonial offerings to Athene in the hope of appeasing her terrible wrath, not realizing in his folly how implacable she would prove. For it is not so easy to divert the immortal gods from their purpose. Well, the pair of them stood there exchanging hard words, till the soldiers, themselves divided in opinion, broke up the assembly in an indescribable uproar. That night, we rested, nursing vindictive feelings against our comrades in arms, for Zeus was making ready to strike us the fatal blow. In the morning, half of us ran our ships down into the tranquil sea, and stowed in them our spoils and the captive women in their low-girdled dresses. Then, though the rest still held back and stayed where they were with Agamemnon, the commander-in-chief, our party embarked and set out. Our ships sailed fast, for a god had levelled the deep swell of the sea. We soon reached Tenedos, and there, eager to be home, we sacrificed the gods. But Zeus had no intention of letting us reach home so soon, and he mercilessly stirred dissension among us once more. As a result, one squadron swung in the curved prows of their vessels round and turned back towards Troy. These were the followers of Odysseus, that wise and subtle king, falling in once more with the washes of Agamemnon, son of Atreus. But I, well aware of the god's sinister designs, fled with the massed ships that formed my company. Warlike Diomedes did the same, bringing his party with him, and later on auburn-haired Menelaus followed too. He caught us up at Lesbos, where we were pondering over the long sea journey, whether to sail north over the rugged coast of Chios and by way of Syria, keeping that island on our left, or to sail south of Chios, past the windy heights of Mimas. We prayed for a sign, and the god made it clear that we should cut straight across the open sea to Euboea, to Euboea, to get out of harm's way as quickly as possible. A whistling wind blew up, and our ships made splendid running down the teeming sea ways, reaching Gerestus during that night, and many a bull's thigh we laid on Poseidon's altar after spanning that weary stretch of water. Hello, Commodore. Well, it's not unique to Lesbos, but the term lesbian Lesbos is where we get the term lesbian from. It's derivative of that name, because largely due to the infamous lesbian sex cult, which took place on the island. Oh, okay, okay, excellent. It was on the fourth day that the company of Diomedes, son of Tydeus, the tamer of horses, brought their fine craft to anchor in Argos. But I held on for Pylos, and the breeze never dropped, from the moment when the god made it blow. Consequently, dear child, I got back without any news of the men we had left behind, and have no idea who escaped or who was lost. But all the news that has come to me as I sit here at home, you shall have, as is only right, and I'll keep nothing back. In the first place, they tell me that the Myrmidon spearmen reached home, in safety under the great Achilles' noble son, and that Poeas' son, the brilliant Philoctetes even, fared equally well. Again, Idomeneus brought all his men to Crete, all, that is, who had survived the war. The sea got none from him. I didn't know Achilles had a son. Interesting. As for Agamemnon, now you live far away, you must have heard how he had no sooner got back than he fell a wretched victim to Aegisthus's plot. Oh, and a grim reckoning there was for Aegisthus, which shows what a good thing it is when a man dies for a son to survive him, as Orestes survived to take revenge on the treacherous Aegisthus, who killed his noble father. So you, my friend, what a tall and splendid young man you've become. Be as brave as Orestes. The future generations will sing your praises. The thoughtful Telemachus replied, King Nestor, son of Neleus, great glory of the Achaeans, that was revenge indeed. Orestes' fame will travel throughout Achaean lands and live in song for generations. If the gods would only give me strength like his to exact revenge for the suitors' vicious crimes, their willful disregard of what is right, and the ways they have humiliated me. But they have no such happiness in store for me, nor for my father. I must just endure. My friend, said Nestor, the Gerenian charioteer. Now, what your own remarks have put me in mind of it, they do say a whole crowd of your mother's suitors are wreaking havoc in your house as uninvited guests. Tell me, do you tamely submit to this? Or have the people of Ithaca been listening to some rumour inspired by a god that has turned their hearts against you? Well, who knows whether some day Odysseus may not come back, alone perhaps, or with his followers, and pay these suitors for their violence? I only wish that bright-eyed Athene could show towards you some of the loving care she devoted to your illustrious father in the course of our hard campaigns at Troy. For never in my life have I seen the gods display such open affection as Pallas Athene showed in her championship of Odysseus. If only she would love and care for you like that, some of those gentlemen would soon have all the thoughts of courtship knocked off their heads and forever. Knocked out of their heads forever. Venerable Lord, said the thoughtful Telemachus, I see no hope of your words proving true. You speak of the impossible. You amaze me. For all my hopes, that will never happen, even if the gods were to will it. Telemachus, the goddess of the flashing eyes exclaimed. What are you saying? A god who wills it can bring anyone safely home, whether far away, however far away he may be. Of myself, I would rather live through untold hardships to reach home in the end, and see that happy day that then comes straight back, and die at my own hearth, as Agamemnon died by the wiles of his wife and Aegisthus. But it is our common lot to die, and the gods themselves cannot rescue even one they love, when death that stretches all men out lays its dread hand upon them. Mentor, the thoughtful Telemachus replied, let us not discuss these painful matters any more. We can no longer count on my father's return. The gods who never die have already set his feet on the dark path that leads to death. But there is something else I'd like to ask Nestor, whose knowledge of men's ways and thoughts is unrivaled. They tell me he has been king through 3 generations, and when I look at him, I seem to gaze on immortality itself. Nestor, son of noble Neleus, son of noble Neleus, tell me, what really happened? How did imperial Agamemnon, son of Atreus, meet his end? Where was Menelaus, and by what cunning snare did the treacherous Aegisthus contrive to kill a man far braver than himself? Was Menelaus away from Achaean Argos and wandering abroad? Is that why Aegisthus plucked up the courage to strike? My child, Nestor, the Gerenian charioteer answered, I will tell you the whole story. You can imagine for yourself what would have happened had Agamemnon's brother, the auburn-haired Menelaus, come back from Troy and caught Aegisthus in the house alive. No mound would have honoured his remains. Flung on the plain outside the city walls, he'd have made meat for the dogs and birds of prey, and there's no woman in Achaea who would have shed a tear for him. His was indeed no petty crime. While we who were besieging Troy toiled at the heroic tasks, he spent his leisured days right in the heart of Argos, where the horses graze, busy charming Agamemnon's wife with his seductive talk. At first, Queen Clytemnestra turned a deaf ear to his dishonourable schemes. She was a sensible woman, and besides, she had a minstrel with her, to whom Agamemnon, when he left for Troy, had given orders to watch over his queen. But when the fatal day came, appointed by the gods for her to yield, Aegisthus took this minstrel to a desert isle, left him there as carrion for the birds of prey, and carried Clytemnestra off to his own house. Fond lover, willing lady. After this great achievement, he heaped the holy altars of the gods with thigh bones and hung the temple walls with fine fabrics and gold, thank offerings for success beyond his wildest dreams. Meanwhile, we were sailing together over the sea from Troy, Menelaus and I, best of friends. But when we were abreast of the sacred cape of Sunium, where Attica juts out into the sea, Phoebus Apollo shot one of his painless arrows at Menelaus' helmsman and killed him, with the tiller of the running ship still in his hands. This man, Phrontis, son of Onotor, had been the world's best steersman in a gale, and Menelaus, though anxious to journey on, was kept at Sunium till he could bury his comrade with the proper rites. But when he too had got away over the wine-dark sea in those great ships of his, and had run as far as the steep headland of Malea, far-seeing Zeus brought disaster on their journey, and sent them a howling gale with giant waves. Then and there, he split the fleet in two. Just taking some water a moment. He drove one group towards Crete, and the Sidonian settlements on the river Iordanus. Now were the lands of Gortyn, and out in the misty sea, there is a precipitous cliff that falls abruptly to the water, and the southwesterly gales drive the great rollers against a headland to the west, in towards Festus, with nothing but this puny reef to keep their violence in check. When one party reached the spot, the crews, by a hair's breadth, escaped destruction, while their ships were splintered on the rocks by the fury of the seas. Meanwhile, Menelaus, with the remaining 5 vessels of his blue-prowed fleet, was driven on by wind and wave to Egypt. And so, it was that he was cruising in these foreign lands, amassing a fortune in goods and gold, while Aegisthus schemed this wickedness at home. After he had killed Agamemnon, the usurper reigned in golden Mycenae, and kept the people in subjection for 7 years. But the 8th brought in disaster, in the shape of Orestes, for that brave youth, returning from Athens, killed Aegisthus, his noble father's murderer, and so the slayer was slain. When Orestes had done the deed, he invited his friends to a funeral banquet for his hateful mother and the cowardly Aegisthus, and on the self-same day, he was joined by Menelaus with a loud war cry, bringing in all the treasures that had filled his holds. Be warned yourself, my friend. Don't stray too long, or too far from home. Nor leave your wealth unguarded with such a set of arrogant brutes in the place, unless you want them to share it out, to eat up all you have, so making your journey futile. I do urge you, however, to pay Menelaus a visit, for he has only just returned home from a region so remote that one might as well give up all hope of return once the winds had blown one astray into the wide expanse of sea, which is so vast and perilous that even the birds cannot cross it in a year. So set off now with your ship and crew, If you prefer to go by land, I have a chariot and horses at your disposal, and my sons are at your service too, to escort you to lovely Lacedaemon, where auburn-haired Menelaus lives. Appeal to him in person, if you want the truth from his lips. Though as wise a man as he is will not lie. As Nestor came to an end, the sun went down, and darkness fell. It was the bright-eyed goddess Athene who spoke next. Venerable lord, your tale was well told. But come, cut up their victims' tongues and mix the wine so that we can pour out offerings to Poseidon and the other immortals before we think of sleeping. It's time for bed, and that the light has faded into dusk. Now it's time for bed. Now the light has faded into dusk. It's not right to remain any longer at this feast of the gods. We should return home. It was the daughter of Zeus who had spoken. Her words did not fall on deaf ears. The squires sprinkled with their hands the water, while the young attendants filled the mixing bowls to the brim after pouring a few drops first in each man's cup. They served them all with wine. The tongues were thrown into the flames, the company rose and sprinkled libations on them. And when they had made their offerings and drunk their fill, Athene and Prince Telemachus both made a move to return to their hollow ship. But Nestor stopped them, protesting loudly. May Zeus and the other immortal gods forbid that you should go to your ship and turn aside from my house, as though it belonged to some destitute pauper who hasn't enough blankets and rugs for himself and his guest to sleep in comfort. Indeed, I have good bedding for all, and I swear that the son of my friend Odysseus shall not lie down to sleep on his ship's deck so long as I am alive, or son survive me here to entertain all visitors that come to my door. Well said, my lord, replied the goddess with the flashing eyes. And it is right for Telemachus to accept your invitation. He will go with you now and sleep in your palace, while I return for the black ship to reassure the men and tell them everything. For I am only the senior in the party. All the rest are young men, of much the same age as the great-hearted Telemachus, and follow him out of companionship. I intend to sleep there by the black ship's hull tonight, and in the morning to set out on a visit to the great-hearted Caconius, who owe me a long-standing debt, not a small one either. But since Telemachus has become your guest, and send him on a chariot with one of your sons, and give him the fastest and strongest horses in your stable. As she finished, the bright-eyed Athene took the form of a vulture and flew off. They were all amazed. The old king marvelled at the sight. Telemachus, my dear boy, he exclaimed, seizing him by the hand. There is no chance that you will ever be a coward or weakling when, young as you are, you already have your guardian gods at your side. For all that live in Olympus, this was no other than the daughter of Zeus, the august lady of Triton, who honoured your noble father too among the Argives. Oh, goddess, be gracious and grant fame to me and to my sons, and to my honoured wife. In return you shall have a yearling heifer, broad in brow, whom no one has yet broken in, and led beneath the yoke. She shall be sacrificed to you with gilded horns. That was his prayer, and Pallas Athene heard him. And now the Gerenian charioteer Nestor led the way towards his stately home, followed by his sons and his sons-in-law. When they came to the royal palace, they took their places on the seats and chairs, and the old man prepared a bowl of mellow wine for his guests, from a jar he had stored for 10 years until the moment when the maid undid the cap and opened it. When the old king had mixed a bowl of this vintage, he poured a little out, with earnest prayer to Athene, daughter of Zeus, who holds the aegis. They made their libations, and quenched their thirst, after which the rest went to their homes for the night. But Nestor, the Gerenian charioteer, arranged for the noble Odysseus' son Telemachus to sleep at the palace itself, on a wooden bedstead in the echoing portico, with the spearman Pisistratus, that leader of men, next to him. He was the only unmarried son left at home. The king himself retired to rest in his room at the back of the high building, where the queen, his wife, prepared his bed. When dawn came, fresh and rosy-fingered, Nestor, the Gerenian charioteer, got up from his bed, went out, seated himself on a smooth white bench which stood, gleaming and polished, in front of his lofty doors. Here his father Neleus used to sit, and give counsel as wise as the gods. But he had long since died, and gone to Hades' halls. So now Nestor of Gerenia sat there in his turn, sceptre in hand, a warden of the Achaean race. His sons all came from their rooms and gathered around him. Achephron and Stratius, Perseus and Aretus, and the noble Thrasymedes. The heroic Pisistratus came last, and made the sixth. The godlike Telemachus was ushered to a seat at their side, and Nestor, the Gerenian charioteer, now made his wish known. Quick, my dear sons, do what I want, so that I can pay my devotions to Athene, who, of all the gods, has first claim upon them, as it was she who came in person to me at the gods' sumptuous banquet. One of you go to the meadow for a heifer, to be brought here as quickly as the cowherd can drive her. And one, go down to the great-hearted Telemachus' black ship, and bring all his crew here except for two. Another, summon the goldsmith, Laerces, to gild the heifer's horns. The rest of you stay with me here, and I'll tell the servants indoors to prepare a feast at the palace, and to fetch seats and firewood and fresh water. As you can tell, there's a lot of feasts throughout this story. They all busily set about their tasks. The heifer came from the meadows. Bold Telemachus' crew came from his good ship. With the smith came, equipped with the bronze tools of his trade, anvil, hammer, and the strong tongs he used for working gold. Athene also came to accept the sacrifice. Then Nestor, the old charioteer, gave out the gold, with which the smith gilded the heifer's horns by way of embellishment to please the goddess's eye. Next, Stratius and Achephron led the heifer forward by the horns. Orestes came from the storeroom, and carrying in his right hand a flavoured bowl of lustral water, and in the other a beaker with and either a basket with barley meal. Yeah, is that right? I'm kind of getting very tired now. I'm kind of losing my eyes. I'll just read that again. Aretus came from the storeroom, carrying in his right hand a floured bowl of lustral water, and in the other a basket with the barley meal. The stalwart Thrasymedes, gripping a sharp axe, stood by to strike the victim down, and Perseus held the dish to catch its blood. The old charioteer Nestor now started the ritual with the lustral water, and scattered the grain, and offered up his earnest prayers to Athene as he began the sacrifice by throwing a tuft of hair from his head onto the fire. When they had prayed and sprinkled the barley meal, Nestor's son, the high-spirited Thrasymedes, stepped in and struck the axe The axe cut through the tendons in the heifer's neck, and it collapsed. At this, the women raised their celebratory cry. Nestor's daughters and his daughter's-in-law, and his honoured wife Eurydice, Clymenus' daughter, Clymenus' eldest daughter even. The men lifted the heifer's head from the trodden earth and held it up, while the leader of men, Pisistratus, cut its throat. When the dark blood had gushed out, and life had left the heifer's body, they swiftly dismembered the carcass, and cut out the thigh bones in the usual way, wrapped them in the folds of fat, and laid raw meat above them. The venerable king burnt these in the firewood, sprinkling red wine over the flames, while the young men gathered round with 5-pronged forks in their hands. When the thighs were burnt up, and they had tasted their inner parts, They carved the rest into small pieces, pierced them with skewers, and held the sharp ends to the fire till all was roasted. The beautiful Polycaste, King Nestor's youngest daughter, now bathed Telemachus. When she had bathed him and rubbed him with olive oil, she gave him a tunic and arranged a fine cloak round his shoulders, so that he stepped from the bath looking like an immortal god. He then went and sat down by Nestor, the shepherd of the people. Well, yeah. When they had roasted the outer flesh and had taken off the skewers, they sat down to dine, with squires to wait on them and fill their golden cups with wine. Oh, yeah. Sorry, I'm getting very tired. Sorry, I'm losing the place. After they had satisfied their appetite and thirst, Nestor, the Gerenian charioteer, said, "Now, my sons, fetch Telemachus a pair of long-maned horses, and harness them to a chariot, so that he can be on his way." They obeyed him promptly, and soon had a pair of fast horses harnessed to a chariot, in which in which the housekeeper had packed bread and wine together with delicacies of the kind that the favourites of the gods eat. Telemachus took his place in the handsome chariot, and Nestor's son, leader of men, Pisistratus, got in beside him, took the reins in his hands, and flicked the horses with the whip to urge them forward. The willing pair flew off towards the plains, putting the high city of Pylos behind them, and all day long the yoke rose and fell on their necks. The sun went down, and all the ways grew dark. They reached Pherae. They reached Pherae, where they drove to the house of Diocles, son of Ortilochus, whose father was Alpheus. There they spent the night and received the gifts of hospitality dictates. As soon as dawn approached, fresh and rosy-fingered, they harnessed their horses once again, and mounted their burnished chariot. Out past the ebbing portico and through the gates they drove, a flick of the whip to speed them on, and then the pair flew on them with a will. They came to the wheat plains and hastened to their journeys, and with all the speed of their thoroughbred horses, the sun went down and all the ways grew dark. Do apologize for all the fumbles near the end of that book. I'm very tired. Yeah, what was I going to say then? So what I wanted to do was, so again, this is only going to be a short stream today. I think I'll just do that book for today, honestly, because I was so late starting anyway. So I do apologise for that, and yeah, I'm just quite tired now. The lighting in my room is not very good, so I'm actually struggling to read it in the light, which is not the best. However, I did want to go over some notes for this. So, if you can't tell, there's a lot in that book there's a lot of stuff all about like religious rites and things, right? Or like hospitality rites in the form of Xenia, and these two big religious offerings they're making, one to Poseidon and one to Athena. And whilst this is also a story of like a cool sailing adventures and fighting monsters and stuff, it's evident there's also meant to be a lot of like religious instructional activities in this as well, like how to, like the best ways to perform rites and stuff, and how to be generous and what to expect from hospitality, because really the crux of this whole story is all about hospitality, right? Even the war itself in Troy was brought on by Paris of Troy essentially taking away Helen, who would become Helen of Troy, I guess. Yeah, she would become Helen of Troy. He took her away from home, which was obviously not good hospitality when he was being hosted by the Greeks at the time when he was there, because Helen was the wife of Menelaus, who they spoke about a lot in that book. And you can see as well, there's a lot of like stuff related to existing heroes who you would have just been expected to have heard about. It's constantly been bringing up this idea because within the story, this is like fresh news. This idea that Agamemnon, who had originally led the Greeks into war against Troy, the Achaeans, it refers to them as Achaeans mainly. Um, he went home and was assassinated by oh, what's his name again? What was his name now? Not Clytemnestra, that's his wife. What was his name? Oh my god, I can't remember. Aegisthus. Why did I forget that? Yeah. I think I mentioned this before, that there was a playwright who wrote a rather controversial version of that tale as a play, where he wrote it so that Clytemnestra was actually the murderer, and Aegisthus was more this like bumbling worm, this bumbling little slug of a man, who she was basically manipulating to get into position, and he was just using her as a tool to progress himself in life. So yeah. But there's a lot of instructional religious material here, which is very interesting. Just a couple notes as well. So so the way it describes a lot of the bulls here, jet black or like pure white, these kind of like colors are like very sought after. I guess it refers like a jet black bull. That was seen as a very like sought after target for sacrifices, right? It was a sign of wealth if you were able to breed jet black bulls. Um, yeah, and the fact that they had this is here. Every company had 9 bulls to sacrifice. This place they've gone to here. This is a place of great wealth. Pylos. This is yeah. So they're basically saying Pylos is a place of great wealth. Perhaps this is due to the victories at Troy, but yeah. Obviously, this ends with Telemachus having a travel partner now in Pisistratus, who I guess is like his like main sidekick for this part of the tale, I guess. Which is nice. It's always good to have friends with you. Again, I was actually unaware that Achilles had a son, but that makes sense. Achilles did have a son, so yeah. So it mentions the Aegis here. So there's a quick note here, a quick footnote from the translator here saying the Aegis, meaning originally goat skin, seems to have been some sort of armor worn for defense, or of a weapon brandished in attack used by Zeus and Athene. So there's been different interpretations to what this is, whether it's actually a shield. A lot of people attribute the Aegis to being Athene's poncho, which you see with her in a lot of depictions in artwork and in statues and stuff. She often has this like large poncho over her chest, and people believe that may have been the Aegis. Though again, it also could have been a shield. Essentially, though, it's this like magical defensive armament. Essentially, though. But yeah, it does originally mean goat skin. Also, it mentioned there's a footnote here about the ceremony of libations here for when you would offer wine. In the ceremony of libation, the first few drops of wine were poured onto the ground or onto the fire as an offering to the gods. This is kind of similar to other things you may have heard from other religions, where you would offer the first. You'd see in a lot of like Asian cultures where you would offer the first drop of food to your ancestors to appease them, and there were similar things in Greece as well. The goddess Hestia, whilst maybe not a very well storied being, was extremely important as a religious figure. She was the goddess of hearth and home, and so she was extremely important on that front. And as a result of that, she was often given these kind of food offerings after if a meal was cooked at home. So yeah, it was very important for that. And here's just another note about sacrifice and libation as well. It says here, at a sacrifice to the gods, the thigh bones of the slaughtered victim were wrapped in fat and burned with some of the flesh in honor of the gods. The sacrificers then tasted some of the offal, which is like the innards and such, the offal, and then had their real feast of the good flesh roasted on spits on skewers. So yeah, again, all just like etiquette and instruction for sacrifices. I do remember there being a story actually about how to basically say why that's the case. Apparently, there was apparently a story where some guy tricked the Greeks, was able to pull a trick on the gods that humans, when making an offering, would get all the good meat, and the gods would get the innards and stuff as their feast. And it was like a bit of a trick to, and there may have been a way realistically to make it so that they could have the good cuts of meat and not waste them. But yeah, uh, it was oftentimes the innards which are more the offering than the actual meat itself. Mm. But yeah, it does mention a bunch of heroes here as well. Ajax, the warlike Ajax. This is probably Ajax the Lesser, or maybe Ajax the Greater. I don't know which one it's referring to here. I don't know if Ajax the Greater fell at Troy. I know it does talk about Ajax the Lesser later on, so it may have been the Greater Ajax here. Achilles, there Patroclus, wise in counsel as the gods. There too Antilochus, my own dear son, as strong as he was handsome, fast runner, and what a fighter too. So I imagine a lot of these people, well, I know some of them absolutely do, but I imagine Antilochus would probably make an appearance in the Iliad as well, but I've not read the Iliad, unfortunately. But yeah, there's a lot here all about the travels of Menelaus as well, and the wealth he amassed, and all that. And yeah, there's a bit of a split in people determining what they wanted to do. Oh, I'm sorry. I've got a note here saying that Diomedes was apparently the only mortal to wound a goddess and had man-eating horses. I didn't know that, but that's a fun note to have written down. Myrmidons, if you don't know them, they were the soldiers of Achilles. They were renowned fighters. There's actually a class in Fire Emblem called Myrmidon, in related to that. I think I originally heard the term from Fire Emblem first. I was like, what is that? And I'm like, oh, that's why they're called Myrmidons, because they're named these vicious warriors. Under Achilles' rule. But yeah, and yeah, there's a bit of irony here as well. Like, oh, I only wish bright-eyed Athene could come towards you with the same loving care she devoted to your father, illustrious father. Even it never refers to one as just their father. It always refers to them in some greater way. A lot of the language you can see is very flowery, and I don't know how much that is just the translation, but you know, a lot of these people are talking in very high and mighty ways, and that's what you expect when they're of higher standing than the common folk, right? These are all like kings and princes and the like, so you want them to talk in a good way. Yeah, it talks here as well about like the story of like again about Agamemnon being killed by Aegisthus and Clytemnestra and the revenge of Orestes. And I mentioned the other week, but it kind of again leans this whole thing of like fathers and the relation between fathers and sons being a common trope throughout a lot of like Greek tales, whether it being the gods having constant visions that they will be overthrown by their next generation deities, whether or in this case whether it be sons avenging their fathers and the like. It seems like almost an obsession with this idea of like generations in Greek mythology. It's very interesting. I wonder what caused that. Also interesting here, when Athena left and she, after revealing herself as a goddess, she she transformed. She was in the form of Mentor, one of Aeneas's compatriots. She turns into a vulture. Very interesting choice of animal to turn into there. I think the owl is commonly associated with Athena. She could also turn into, as she did earlier on, could turn into another smaller bird to escape without being seen by any other people. But it was deliberately a vulture there, perhaps a warning of things to come for those who would dare mess with those who have her blessing. But yeah, and again, a lot of stuff here about like different rights, different rights. You know, like um, Telemachus was bathed by one of Nestor's daughters, his youngest daughter, who, as the youngest, probably would have had responsibility for those kind of things, if she was of age at least. I imagine the age for when she would have had these kind of responsibilities would have been maybe around 14ish. But yeah, there's a lot to glean from that. But yeah, um, now Achilles, Telemachus is off on the road again. This time with his buddy Pisistratus. I don't believe we have any kind of funny, wacky Telemachus and Pisistratus road trip adventures. Unfortunately, not. But we're on the way now. We're on the way to see Menelaus, to see what's happened with his journeys, and also to see if any information on Odysseus can be found. What I will say as a spoiler, this is where we'll also see a new god in the book. It's definitely a lesser deity though, in the form of the deity Proteus, which is the origin for the word Protean. Just to define Protean actually, because it's a bit of a how do you describe Protean? Protean, according to dictionary.cambridge.org, means easily and continuously changing. So my first introduction to this word outside of this book was Pokemon. Oh god, my face has gone like weird now. What's going on? Whoa. There we go. It was Pokemon, yeah. So there's the ability Protean, which Greninja has. I believe Kecleon has it. And there's a similar ability called Libero, I think it's called. Which that rabbit thing from Sword and Shield has. Can't remember its name. But yeah, they're all Protean comes from the god Proteus, who was this shape-shifting demigod. But yeah, I think we're gonna have to leave his story for next time. I think that's everything for now, though. Again, I'm very sorry for the short stream. I was very late starting because I was preparing food for my house and I got lost to time, so I do apologize for that. I may do a stream tomorrow. I've realized that I've not had a day to just like decompress. I booked this week off from work and I've not decompressed at all. I think it's largely because I've not gone out and do anything. So maybe I'll figure something out for that over the next day or two. But I may stream on Sunday, but I'll be streaming on Monday, or maybe stream tomorrow. I don't know yet. Anyway, that's going to be everything for today, folks. Thank you so much for listening. I hope it was enjoyable despite my fumbles near the end. And yeah, I hope you have a good night. See you in a bit. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Bye.